presentation. We're going to have a short presentation from Jenny Keller, and Ethan is going to introduce her in a second here, and then that will be followed by kind of a state of the organization, things that have gone on this year, as well as kind of what we're looking forward to doing in the future. And then after the meeting concludes, we'll have light refreshments over at the museum, so hopefully y'all can stay and we can talk. So I'm going to introduce Ethan now, who's our program coordinator, and I'm sure you all know him.
Okay, so that's my control panel. I see. Yes, okay. There's our agenda for the day.
Oh, yeah, problem here with Ethan being 7 feet tall.
No, you're fine. We are all good. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. You hopefully know me. If not, please approach me in the refreshments period afterward. My name is Ethan, and I do miscellaneous tasks here around the Historical Society. Today's annual meeting will begin with a lecture from Genevieve Keller. I know, to me, Professor Keller from last spring, what I will repeat many times to people, my favorite course at the University of Virginia, where I remain a student, at least for the moment. She will be speaking with us today on historic preservation in the state of Virginia, the subject of her life's experience and expertise. She has worked as a historian, a preservation advocate, and a national leader in rural preservation, particularly in contexts like Louisa County. Back in the 1990s, in fact, she served as the project lead in the crafting of the 1993 Architectural History Report for the Jefferson Planning District on Louisa County, which is a lengthy report, but much more interesting and compelling than you'll normally find on that kind of government report language. It's very verbose and something that can be published as a book in its own right, and we may well do so if possible. Now, Ms. Keller has founded a consulting business in preservation planning, Land and Community Associates, which she runs with her husband, and served as a lecturer at the University of Virginia, and as a member of the Charlottesville City Planning Commission as well. There is a whole other side, of course, to urban preservation, which she can speak to. She currently chairs, last year was vice chair, but I suppose now chair of the Board of Trustees for Preservation Virginia, our state's largest, if you're not familiar, non-governmental organization devoted to stewarding, interpreting, and advocating on behalf of Virginia's historic resources, and they own a number of noted historical sites like Hanover County's Scotchtown and the John Marshall House in Richmond. Thank you for joining us today, Professor, and we'll hand it off to you. If we can get her PowerPoint up.
Yep, it just goes through.
Oh, very good.
Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Ethan. It was a pleasure to have you in class last spring. We had, I think, generally we had a pretty good time, and I
Speak up or adjust the mic.
Okay. How about that? I'm a little bit shorter than you think.
Put it lower because you're going to be reading.
Maybe a little bit taller.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to introduce you to my work partner and spouse, Tim Keller, who is for some reason manning the tech booth, because I think there's a lot going on in Louisa today, and the tech guy needed to go over to the high school. So we've been working for about an hour, converting files, and hopefully things don't go, hopefully there isn't a hitch, but if there is, we'll have a marital spat across the audience. I'm sure they'll be much more entertaining than historic preservation this afternoon. But thank you for inviting me to visit and speak with you on a nice fall afternoon in Louisa. I was very pleased to have received this invitation from Ethan. He contacted me a few weeks ago, and I really enjoyed getting to know him last spring in my preservation planning class, and you're quite fortunate to have him working with you on your various projects and programs. As a native of Central Virginia, Louisa has been a place that I have traversed through the years on many trips to Richmond, first as a child on 250 and now more often on Interstate 64 as I travel to Richmond or Williamsburg or Jamestown or Hanover or any of those other places that my work and my advocacies take me. It's also a place that I remembered as a child where one of my second cousins came to go to high school. Maybe here, maybe this is the building, where she came to high school because the Charlottesville Public High School was closed in September of 1958 because of the Commonwealth's enforced massive resistance. So that was kind of some lore in my family that made me feel a little more connected to Louisa. Then as a college student, I traveled back and forth more weekends than not from Mary Washington in Fredericksburg back home to Charlottesville. And then in 1972, when I was contemplating my career choices, I enrolled in a course in architectural history at UVA. At the same time, I was working full-time at Monticello guiding tours, and I managed to get Tuesdays and Thursdays off so I could take this course in architectural history to decide if that was the route that I wanted to take. And that was going pretty well, along with trying to be a back-to-the-land farmer in Fluvanna County, the wilds of Fluvanna County, raising goats and fennel for some reason. Anyway, it was a year of getting in touch with things and finding myself. But one day in that architectural history class, there was an invitation to come to, of all places, Louisa County, to visit Green Springs. And that was the pivotal fork in my road. We all have those, right? The path taken or the path not taken. And we remember those through our whole lives. So that was the day here in Louisa County that it all came together for me, experiencing for the first time in both an academic and an applied sense the theory and practice of historic preservation as embodied in Green Springs' cultural landscape. And so I did decide to undertake graduate studies in architectural history at UVA. And over the decades, cultural landscapes have continued to be a major focus of my work and my research and my writing. Here we are, Louisa County. And I've taken a little bit of Louisa County and even that very first field trip through my work. It's been a theme that has informed my private, public, and academic work for the National Trust, the National Park Service, a subsequent Harvard Fellowship, Landscape Studies at Edinburgh, teaching at UVA and at Mary Washington, and in many advocacies across Central Virginia and the Commonwealth. So Louisa was part of my life and my career long before my firm, Land and Community Associates, was awarded the contract that Ethan described to lead the county's 1992 Historic Resource Project. Some of the places in the Park Service my travels have taken me, where I've returned to that. It's been my privilege to work not only in Louisa County, but all over the nation, particularly at Park Service sites. And I especially value being among Virginia's preservation thought leaders, helping to support and sometimes guide the amazing work people and organizations engaged in historic preservation and local history. And this is the headquarters of Preservation Virginia in Richmond, on Franklin Street, across from the Jefferson Hotel, the historic Cole Diggs House. Green Springs was a leader in the 1970s in rural preservation. And enlisting and protecting a National Historic Landmark rural historic district, and then using legal techniques and litigation and protective historic and conservation easements to resist potentially destructive development and mineral extraction. Today, Green Springs remains a model historic district nationally, and I often assign its National Register nominations to my students at UVA even though it dates from 1973. And I am humbled that it actually predates by more than a decade the National Register guidance document that I helped co-author on historic rural district documentation and evaluation. But this afternoon, I would like also to amplify other places and projects in Virginia that represent not only the breadth and width of preservation, but introduce you to other issues and people who power preservation all over our Commonwealth. Because I really come here this afternoon to celebrate people and place. And I speak to you in the final months of my actually even 3-year term chairing Preservation Virginia, the oldest statewide preservation organization in the nation, predating the National Trust for Historic Preservation. But then there's a lot of baggage associated with being born in 1889. And I have committed decades to working with colleagues and advocates to strengthen and reform statewide preservation in Virginia. That has been my avocation for much of my career, and for the last 3 decades, Preservation Virginia has restructured, regrouped, and reorganized in its transformation to reclaim its position as a leader in preservation in the United States. We started out as mainly a property owning organization, and over the last couple of years, we were doing strategic planning to become a more modern and more inclusive organization. Sure what's happening here. To become the organization that we are today, that is really very concerned with networking with other historic organizations across the Commonwealth, such as yours, marketing, education. The pandemic really put us into gear with a lot of virtual programming, both for our properties and for our statewide issues and programs. So please visit preservationvirginia.org at some point to learn a little more about that. Not sure what's happening here. We did have to convert a keynote to a PowerPoint. So anyway, here we are with what we're trying to do. Bring together, these are our areas of focus, knowledge and innovation, sustainable stewardship, integrity, all of it about making a difference in the Commonwealth and beyond.
Jenny,
Yes,
is this the break point for the video? Is that why that went dark?
I'm not sure why it went dark. It might have been something from the conversion, but I think